would you like the good news or would you like the good news? The good news is that we're alive. Yay! That's the best news I can give you. The other good news, I'll tell you in a second. First of all, I have to play you my favorite track off of the Brighton drum and bass ride. It's not long, it's like 2 minutes. So in the whole time that these rides have been on, there have been 5 or 6 majestic tracks. Majestic. That's the only way I can describe them. Almost otherworldly. They just take you to a different place. And this track is one of those tracks. It's one of the majestic ones.
I feel free when you're next to me. I'm free when you stay by my side. I'm so free when you're next to me. Didn't think you'd leave me behind. We were getting too comfortable. It's too much, and now I can't breathe. But now I'm getting uncomfortable. It's too much that I couldn't see. And now I'm feeling responsible. There's so much that I know I couldn't be. But now I'm getting uncomfortable. It's too hard. You're not here to stand up, just tell me. In a different time zone, far apart. Now there's nothing left to say. Had to have my eyes closed for a start, so I can breathe another day. I feel free when you're next to me. I'm free that you're not by my side.
The only thing that wasn't completely perfect was maybe that track wasn't the second track wasn't the right transition, as in it transitioned into the second track which you just heard, but it wasn't the perfect track to go into. I don't think. I think it's the first time I've ever thought that wasn't quite the right track. But it's beautiful. It's her English accent, it's her voice, and this is 100% my type of drum bass. This is right up my alley. It's so beautiful. Whenever these rides are on, I've got other things to talk about, but just briefly, whenever these rides are on, I timestamp, I write the times of the tracks that I love so that I can go back to it. I usually use these sets to exercise to when I'm doing my stretching. And a couple of people had commented on under this note that I left to find out what the names of the tracks are, which I have no idea about. But one person, I think he tried to leave a message and it hadn't been allowed through. I'll tell you exactly what he says, in fact. He got so annoyed. He said, I commented before, but my comment was removed. WTF? And I had a little giggle to myself because I thought, whoops, it's because of me, sir. YouTube, I'm not a darling of YouTube. YouTube does not favor me because of my controversial comments. So it's the first time I'm guessing that he's had this issue. Whereas people on my channel, you have experienced not being able to have your comments come through, Sometimes I'm not even able to reply to comments on other channels. Yeah, that's how YouTube does me. So the good news, the other good news, apart from the fact that we are live, is that you wouldn't believe it, but I managed to get a ticket to go and see Jamie Woon. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. So, you know that he hasn't been around for about 8 years or so. He's possibly, other than Barrio, my favorite artist in the UK. And it's been a long 8-year wait for people who love his music. So recently he released tickets for his concert in London. The venue is so interesting, you guys. I've never been to this venue, but apparently I think it's called Union Chapel, which is an actual church. So by day, they do church type stuff and they help the homeless in London. And then by night, they hold these events, music events. I think it, and I don't know if the funds that are raised through these music events go to help these important causes or not. But if that's how it works, I think it's such a great concept and idea. So I didn't get those tickets, even though I was able to, because I knew about it in advance before they were released. I thought, let me wait this one out. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make the date. And the venue, although it's going to have amazing acoustics, I'm guessing, because of the fact that it's a church, it's a 1,200 capacity venue. And I like intimate settings. I like to see an artist. I really like to see artists at their infancy because it allows me to see them in intimate settings. So I didn't get the ticket. They got sold out. And there's always that feeling of regret, especially when it comes to Jamie Woon. And then, was it this week? Must have been after the drum and bass ride. Yeah, probably. Otherwise, I would have mentioned it to you. These tickets became available to see him at a record store in East London, which I've been to once before to see an artist, but I can't remember who. I never venture into East London, but they tend to have the best events in East London in terms of music. So he's going to be at Rough Trade East in October. I still don't know if I can go or not, but I got a ticket because the capacity is max 300. It's going to be an intimate setting. Excuse me. And this time around, I just couldn't not. So yeah, I was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. And funnily enough, on the same day, MGK, is that his name? Machine Gun Kelly, yeah. He's going to be performing at one of their other venues, Rough Trades, one of their other locations on the same day. I'm not a fan of MGK other than when he first came out and he did that track. I think you all know that track. Amazing track. And then he went off and did rock, completely random. And you know, even that track that diss track that he did against Eminem, everyone loved the Eminem version, and I much prefer the MGK version. I actually don't think Eminem sounds great when he's rapping, which is so unpopular as an opinion. I think he's skillful in terms of the lyrics, his speed, his rhythm, but he doesn't sound great to me, and that's why I've never been into Eminem. MGK, he sounds like a proper hip hop artist. So yeah, it's really bizarre how he suddenly went into this world of rock. And I don't listen to him. But I just thought that was kind of a funny little coincidence that at first I thought they were in the same venue because I thought that Rough Trade only had one inner. But they're in different locations in East London, northeast, east. So that was the nicest thing that happened this week. And then I made some notes. I actually didn't feel like coming on today, to be honest. My energy's been a little bit low past couple of days. My periods are coming. But I thought, no, let me come on, because I always change my energy when I am on here. What have I got? What titles? I've been listening to John Griffin recently. I take a break from him and then I go back. I think he's one of the best people on YouTube for content in terms of self development. He's obviously geared towards men, and men in particular who are going through divorces. His viewership seems to be on the more intelligent side. They're older, obviously, that's probably why. But I think the information that he gives out applies to anyone. It's not just relegated to men. But I think he's really, really good for men to listen to. My only umbrage, the only thing I take umbrage with him is that he clearly uses professionals and he encourages men to do that as well. And I say to you, keep yourself pure. It's not just women that have to be aware of that. Yeah, keep yourself clean and pure. And that I feel no qualms about saying that. Your body is a temple, treat it as such. And if you can, stay away from that kind of thing. So that's my only issue with him, really. Is there anything else I have that I think is bad advice from him? I'm sure there are other things, but on the whole, I think he's excellent. And I've been watching some of his content recently. Oh, before I talk about him, so I screenshot some comments that I wanted to comment on from one of his videos. Actually, one of his earlier videos from way back when he first started out. In 1 year, he's got to almost 100 subscribers. He's so interesting because he talks about the same topic, men, women, and it's like the same thing, but he's so eloquent that he can just come up with these different conversations on the same topic. I find it really interesting. I want to tell you about the guy at the drum and bass event. Maybe later. Okay, so I went back to one of his early videos from 11 months ago because I just wanted to see how he'd started out. And I can't remember the actual title of the video, Pretty Girl Paradox. So he was saying how beautiful women have a lot of issues. I put this on, I lock the exposure, but yeah, so he was saying that beautiful women are entitled and they have red flags waving all around them. I think he's right, but I think it's not only beautiful women who have these issues. I think regular women these days anyway can behave in the same way. As you know, I spend very little time around women. I find them, not because I don't like women, and in fact there's one girl at the moment on Instagram who I just really, really like. It's not because I don't like women, I just find that they're not in control of they can't hide their envy or jealousy, and they're not logical, or they can't move between logic and emotion a lot of the time. And I find those characteristics scary, or the lack thereof. You know, I don't comment about this stuff often because when you talk about these things, there's a feeling on the internet that if you talk about the flaws of women, it means that you are the problem. And so I refrain about talking about these things, but I think it's wonderful that men are talking about these things. Anyway, this conversation was about Pretty Girl Paradox, and I read this one comment underneath, which I thought was a really good video, a really good comment. The guy said, "I think the problem is not with these women, but with us. We're the ones who choose to prioritize superficial features. We're the ones who choose to ignore character. A good person of any gender is actually rare. Let's be extremely generous and say 1/5 of people have good character. Now let's say only 1/5 of women of those are pretty. Again, we're being generous. That means in a room of 25 women, only one has both these qualities. So it's a fool's errand to try and get both. Of the two, only a good character will add value and happiness to your life. I agree 100% with this, except I would extrapolate this even further and say that nowadays it's not just beautiful women who have these difficulties and issues, it's also just normal women. And so, yes, of course, character is what you're really looking for. And it's so easy to spot. So I read these comments by these men, and it just makes, I try not to judge, but I'm like, how did you get yourself into this situation? And then I think to myself and the things that I'm not happy with myself about, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I wouldn't want anyone to judge me for the things that I'm not happy about with myself in terms of where I'm at in my life and where I feel I should be. So then I can't judge this. It's all about experience, I think, being around people enough to be able to spot flaws, to be able to spot the danger signs. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of men, they don't have enough experience in people, whereas women tend to be more social, I think, and they tend to speak to people, both men and women, in a way that men just don't. And so I think women wise up more quickly to, I don't know, I don't think you can really generalize. I think basically the more people you are around, the more you spot qualities or traits that will not be of any benefit to your life. And so it becomes very easy to filter people out. This other guy said, 3 weeks into my marriage, my new wife stopped cooking. She didn't say why, so I figured she just wasn't hungry. So I steamed some vegetables for myself, which I like, but she didn't. She went ballistic and told me I had to cook what she liked. I said, no way. I told her if she didn't want to cook, that was fine. But cooking was not my forte, and I wasn't going to learn how to cook just to appease her. 6 months later, we divorced. At this kind of situation, it would be better to experience this before a divorce, before even getting married. But yeah, it's just sheer entitlement, isn't it? If you're not interested in cooking, well, at least agree to prepare the vegetables or food, cut them up, agree to do all the washing up afterwards. That just seems like the sensible approach. So yeah, I think this man made the right decision because it's not just about the food, it's about the attitude. And then, yeah, someone said it's honestly, the problem is not that the woman was bad, but that men often ignore red flags and even outright bad behavior from women and still go into relationships and even marry them. It will not get better. We men need to collectively stand up for ourselves, which we have stopped doing. Yes, I think men have a fear of conflict. This is something that I've recognized from being around men. They like to avoid, even the psychopaths, they do everything possible to avoid conflict. And by conflict, what do I mean by that? If I don't like someone's behavior or how they're treating me, even if it's just a friend, I say it outright. I have no problems about calling out bad behavior. Why? Because I wouldn't behave like that towards anyone. I wouldn't bring any sort of trouble to anyone else. If I'm not going to cause any trouble for you and not bring any difficulty into your life, my expectation is that you also would not do the same to me. And so if you are going to, then I will call out the behavior. Some men respect this, others are chancers And then finally, you have people like the psychopaths and the sociopaths who just don't care, or who lack empathy and can't put themselves in other people's shoes. So yeah, men need to kind of stick up for themselves. If someone's doing something that you think is inappropriate, you need to mention it. You need to not encourage bad behavior. I read a lot of comments about how women have been brought up by principled fathers or strict fathers or proper fathers tend not to be entitled and tend not to behave badly or tend not to take advantage, or they've been raised in such a way that that kind of behavior is just completely and utterly abhorrent. And I would agree with this because I wasn't allowed to get away with any bad behavior. Not that I was a good kid, you guys. I was a good kid, and so I didn't bring any trouble to my parents. However, if there were moments when I did cause any, however, if I didn't lock this phone is weird. I have to lock it in advance. It doesn't let me lock it whilst I'm. So I think that's something that I don't even think this is just a woman problem. It's a male problem too. Women maybe can be more difficult and challenging in terms of entitlement, but men can be opportunistic. So women and men have different issues, and I've described this in detail before. Women have to be careful too. Women put up with bad behavior also, and then they allow these guys to do crazy things, and then they worry why they're being treated badly. Everyone has to take accountability for themselves. But yes, I've noticed that men, they can dish it out sometimes, the opportunistic ones. But when you call them out on their bad behavior, they have nothing. They have nothing to say, or they don't. This would happen often and frequently with my psychopathic acquaintance. He would behave badly. I would call him out on his behavior. I wasn't in a relationship with him, so for me, it was not an issue in that. That would have been the end had that been a relationship, but it wasn't a relationship, and so I tried to correct his behavior. Eventually, you just realize you can't change people, and they are who they are, and that was that. But when I called him out on his bad behavior, he would just shut down. No dialogue, no communication, nothing. To me, that's the biggest red flag. And I would never get in a relationship with someone who's not able to communicate and also not take accountability for their bad behavior. And this applies to women, men. It's not a one sex issue. It's just a people issue. And what you're looking for is someone who acknowledges that they've done something wrong and tries to correct it so that it doesn't happen again. And if you're someone who's afraid of that type of conflict, afraid of calling out bad behavior, you're going to have a lot of problems in relationships, because relationships are all about, hopefully, good relationships. You don't have these kind of issues. Both people care about the other and conduct themselves in a way that doesn't bring any difficulty or harm to the other. The type of relationships where it's not going to be like this, I'm guessing, are ones where there's some kind of psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism involved. Those words again, you need to recognize and understand the difference between these conditions, because it might save you it might save you in the future. I told you about this guy who I knew, who had married a very beautiful woman by his standards and by perhaps most people's standards. For me, she was beautiful in terms of the plastic surgery that she'd had done, the bleached blonde hair. Uh, it was a contrived kind of beauty rather than a natural beauty. But I could accept that she was attractive in the eyes of many people. And I told you that he'd married her knowing that she'd been with a very wealthy guy before, had not worked. I don't judge that. If a man is really, really wealthy and he wants to look after his wife and she doesn't work, well, that's most women would want that, I think, because they would want to look after their kids. The problem was she didn't even really want to look after the kids. She wasn't that invested, I think. Anyway, he marries her because of how she looks. And he's asset rich, but he's not cash rich. He's not billionaire level rich. And eventually they get divorced because she's not happy with the lifestyle that he's providing, plus other issues. He starts to see her narcissism, and she's very, very intelligent, incredibly intelligent. So she is able to manipulate him. She knows how to say all the right things. And eventually they go through a very lengthy court case. It's pretty bad. And she's now shacked up with her third relationship, and he's also extremely successful. And then, so as a woman, you just think, well, who's at fault here? Is it her who thinks she can get away with everything and tries it on? Or is it the men who are allowing her to get away with this stuff? And I would argue that it's the men, because if men didn't allow for this type of behavior, then this type of behavior wouldn't exist. So I think men need to take some accountability as well. So I think this is one of the things I notice all the time on manosphere content. Men don't have the experience with women. They prioritize beauty over character. They get involved with these women, and then all hell breaks loose. And then you're left thinking, well, you must have spotted some kind of red flag throughout the relationship with her. As another example, I think I've given you this example before. I'm in a very straightforward mood because, like I said, my periods are coming. And when my periods are coming, I have less of a filter. I told you about this woman in Japan. I learned about how women are opportunistic whilst I was in Japan. Prior to that, I was so naive. I didn't understand all the things that women do. This is not a woman bashing channel. There are men who are also opportunistic. Just to go back to this guy who married this woman who was a gold digger, he had assumed that she was incredibly wealthy because she'd been married to this incredibly wealthy guy before him. So I think he was opportunistic as well. He was trying to marry into money too. It wasn't just her. She was trading off his family name because he came from old English landowner, a titled type family, and he was trading off the back of her having divorced a very, very wealthy man. They're both basically using each other in some way or other. So this is not me bashing women. It's me saying, look, there are issues with both genders, and if you go in with your eyes wide open, you should be able to avoid all these issues. The first time I realized how opportunistic women were when I was in Japan. There was what are they called in Japan? I've forgotten their name. They're the ladies that men. So they're how to talk about this without. There are women who trade their time in Japan from men's company and they get paid for that. So these men, businessmen, go to these clubs and bars and they pay extortionate amounts for alcohol and the female keeps them company. And these women are incredibly beautiful and some of them are maybe not incredibly beautiful, but they're very charming and charismatic and they know how to speak to men and treat men really well, and that's how they get paid. Some of them on the side also have relationships with these men who come into their place of work. What these women used to do was they'd have 3, 4, 5 men on the go at the same time. And when it was her birthday, for example, the guys would ask her what she would want and she'd request a Louis Vuitton bag. On a side note, I came to hate Louis Vuitton in Japan, although in the past I'd always admired when I was much younger, the suitcase, how it looked. I came to utterly hate the look of Louis Vuitton because it was so cheapened in Japan by these ladies, these professional ladies who all used to carry it. And everyone used to carry Louis Vuitton in Japan. It just became a very cheap kind of luxury label. So they would request these bags from 5 guys, the same bag. So each guy would buy this bag for her. She'd keep one of the bags and then she'd go to these resellers and sell the other 4 and make lots of money off the bag. But because she had this one bag that everyone had bought for her, each guy thought it was the bag that he'd bought for her. I couldn't believe this. I was so naive. Even still now, I think I'm really naive as to the goings on of men and women. That's why I'm really, really careful who I spend time with. So that was the first thing that I became aware of when I was there, and how women were so crafty and able to kind of get what they want out of men. And then the other thing was, I used to deal with this one lady. I've talked about her briefly before. She was pretty in the sense that she was really put together. She wasn't naturally beautiful, but she was incredibly attractive because of the way she did her makeup. She had this dyed blonde hair. A lot of Japanese girls get dyed blonde hair. She dressed really beautifully and she was incredibly charming and charismatic. And I really, really enjoyed my conversations with her. She was just cool. We liked each other. She was one of 2 women that I really, really liked in Japan. One of the things that, again, I don't judge people, I take them as they are. I don't know how the world is like in Japan, in the sense that women have it a lot harder than men. They're not allowed the same promotions in the workforce. They do what they can do to trade their beauty for a really great lifestyle. It is what it is. All power to you if you can get away with it. And if you choose to engage in that kind of behavior, because again, it takes two to tango. It's not just the women who are encouraging this behavior. The men are allowing for it. So she had this boyfriend who'd been sent abroad on secondment, on a transfer, and he just wouldn't propose to her. She'd been with him for ages. They were at the same company, and it was a constant sense of frustration for her. So when she'd go to see him and visit him, she'd do all his cooking, all his laundry, all his housework. She would just pamper him like nothing else. And she would always complain that he wasn't particularly nice to her and he just wouldn't propose. She spoke about him in such a way that I always got the feeling that she actually really hated him. But he was incredibly successful and he was going to do well in the future. He was going to be one of these guys that just worked his way up. The office culture ended up at CEO level, that type of thing. And I remember once I think I asked her, why don't you just move on and just find someone who you will be able to have a really good relationship with. And it seemed like such an odd question to her. It was out of it was out of her realm of thinking. She'd invested so much time in this guy. She would have to start all over again, I guess, in hunting for another man at his level of success. And because he was in her company, I suppose it would be awkward to start something else with someone else in the company. I don't know. But it was so bizarre to me because she just wasn't in love. It seemed like maybe she was in love with him, but she also had a lot of hate for him because he just wasn't giving her what she wanted, which was this engagement, and I'm guessing the opportunity to exit the company and live a comfortable life at home. And so I was baffled by this because I thought, we have this one life. Don't you, in my mind, I'm thinking, don't you want to be happy? Don't you want to be with someone who genuinely loves and cares about you? Don't you want to not feel this sense of anger and frustration every time you're talking about or dealing with your significant other? I couldn't understand it. I still don't understand it. But that's how a lot of women survive in cultures like the Japanese culture. Their opportunities, it's changing now, but their opportunities are not the same as men. And so the only way that they can garner the best type of lifestyle for themselves is to marry these high echelon men. And on the flip side, you've got these high echelon men who marry for beauty. I remember that it was a huge thing back then for a lot of these businessmen in Japan to marry air hostesses because they were all very attractive and they all knew how to treat a man. But as we know, you can't hide your true character for long. I don't even know how you could waste your time like that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Imagine investing that much time and pretending you're something else when you could be investing that time in yourself. So here I am being judgmental, but it's just something that I think people should be aware of. Men take advantage of women, women take advantage of men. And if you want to be with someone who's not taking advantage of you, you've got to be hyper alert and hyper aware. Those people do exist. They exist, but they're far and few in between. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's just something that I think, for example, back in the day, you wouldn't have a woman behaving like in the West, women behaving like these women in Japan. But now that things are tough out there, you've now got women, Western women, behaving like Asian women. So I don't know. It's just something I was thinking about because I read all these comments and I just think you need to take accountability. You need to take accountability. Something else that I was thinking about. Should I leave it there? Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. One thing that I wanted to mention is, oh, okay, I'm going to mention this really quickly. I don't watch, even though I like him because I think he has a lot of heart, I don't watch Raymond Thoughts and Minds. I discovered him a few months back. And, you know, he's got a wicked sense of humor. He's very much himself. He feels, he's an empath, I think. He feels on a very deep level. And you can see that the way the world is really troubles him. He's a classic empath. He can be negative, and I say this without any malice. And so I don't watch him often because I just don't want that kind of negativity in my head. But I think the things he talks about are important, and it's not just about men and women. He talks about the economy, he talks about the state of the world, He talks about so many different types of topics, which makes him a very, very interesting person. On one of his recent videos, he was talking about, can't remember the title of the video, but someone in the comments had written this, and I completely agree with this. Someone said, it feels like there's zero room for mistakes or exploring now. Boomers and Gen X could mess around all their 20s, trying different stuff, and still get their career going in their 30s. Youth is dead. And I thought this was such a true statement. When I was growing up, there was a time that you could just sort of explore. I think my time in Japan was that period of exploring. And by exploring, I mean just doing what you really like. Now, I stayed too long. I should have come back to the UK much earlier, and that was my mistake. But had I come back earlier, I would have had a few years in Japan, and then I could have started my proper career in the UK. Nowadays, I don't think that, unless you're into computers and you can make use of the internet, unless you are savvy with the internet and you can start your own business, or you have the type of personality where you can attract people to you, it's possible to be very successful just with the internet. But if you're not that person, or if you have no interest in being that person, it does feel like there's less options for young people to explore. And this is such a travesty, because what's happening is that we're losing artists and creatives. And once you lose artists and creatives from the world is a little bit less sunny, or a lot less sunny. And that's a real shame. And well, we know why this has happened, but it takes a lot of guts and a lot of confidence in yourself to push against it. This will require another video, and I think the title will be The Perfect Slave. What will the title be? The best slave wins. It's a comment underneath. That was a great comment, actually, underneath one of Raymond Thoughts and Minds. I don't encourage you to watch this stuff. It's better to be oblivious and just focus on yourself. Don't spend time watching these things. It's not good for you. It's really not. That's why I limit what type of content I watch on YouTube. But being naive is also not beneficial. So you want to have this balance of not being naive, but also keeping your purity and innocence and your starry-eyed way of looking at the world. Before I go, that guy with the rucksack, it's not that heavy a rucksack on the drum bass rides. I tried to figure out what he was drinking, because that stuff seems to be really powerful. I screenshot a picture of him with his can, but Google Images wouldn't allow me. Yes, this is the depth of my intel. Google Images wouldn't allow me to figure out what he was drinking. But I did notice that during the ride, he took out 3 cans, same can. It's not Red Bull, but it is silver and blue. That much I figured out. So that's what's in his rucksack. It's not anything else other than these cans of liquid that are giving him energy.